UX Podcast is funded by James and myself, together with contributions and help from Ambition and Power and from you, our listeners. You can contribute too, any amount you'd like, however often you'd like, or by donating your time. Just go to uxpodcast.com/support.
UX Podcast episode 286.
I'm James.
And I'm Pat.
And this is UX Podcast, balancing business, technology, people and society every other Friday since 2011. And with listeners literally all over the world, from Puerto Rico to Uganda. And from time to time, we bring you a repeat show. This is an episode from our extensive back catalogue, resurfacing some of the ideas and thoughts from the past that we believe are still relevant and well worth revisiting.
And today, we are revisiting our conversation with Donna Spencer, for a long time a freelance user experience designer who specializes in large, messy websites and large, messy business applications. And today, she's the principal product designer at MakerX. She has written 3 books on card sorting, on web writing, and information architecture. And we met her at EuroIA 2017, where she hosted a workshop introduction to information architecture, covering core concepts and practices that are fundamental to any kind of information architecture work.
Now, Donna, she is Australian and lives in Australia, and that means that it's not so often that you get the chance as a European to meet her and talk to her in person. But she was here in Stockholm for EuroIA in September 2017, and as well as being on holiday with her daughter. So it was especially good fun to sit down face to face with Donna and have a chat. What do you actually even say to people to get them introduced to information architecture?
So I teach this workshop in 2 formats, one as a half day and one as a full day.
Yeah.
And here at EuroIA,
yeah.
let's get that one in a word. I had 4 hours, and teaching information architecture, all the things in 4 hours is insane.
Teaching almost anything in 4 hours is quite insane.
I know. So, and this is going to sound really dry as well, but I promise I'll make it more fun than this is going to sound. I talk about like category theory. So I teach people about how we think about categories, like Aristotelian category theory and modern category theory, and so how we actually think and how categories work in our brains and how language and categories are embodied and stuff, and I make it fun and we play some games. So we really that's kind of the foundation, and that's, I think, a foundation for information architecture work is really understanding groups of things and concepts and ideas. And then we go through a little bit of a kind of a, we want to have an activity in a workshop. So we go through something to work on. So we do a tiny, weeny bit of user research discussion. And I focus on, because these days, most people who turn up to a workshop know that user research exists. Many of them have done it. They know something about it. So I don't need to teach them what user research is.
Because at this kind of, when you've got this kind of audience, because we're at it's a UX information architecture conference, it isn't the place that strikes me as where you turn up to get on the train, to actually start your journey in some of these subject matters. Yeah.
So I talk only about the things that you might think about for user research if you're doing an information project. And there's not a lot, but I just get them thinking about those things. Because I find that when I'm working with people, if they've done a whole bunch of discovery kind of user research, they haven't always thought about real information use and really diving into how people, find, use, share information. So I do a little bit of that. Then I talk a whole chunk about content analysis, because I think that's, again, one of the things that if you've been doing kind of more interactive projects and all of a sudden you need to do a more informational one, I've seen a lot of projects fail to understand the content deeply. People are really good at going, we know we need to understand our users, so they do good user research but fail to understand content. So I dive into that. teach a little bit of content modeling so they can start thinking about relationships and objects and, what content actually is. Talk about different kind of classification schemes, like when audience schemes work and when task-based schemes work and subject-based schemes and things like that.
Oh, you mean like you split it into target audiences?
Yeah, so if you're doing an information architecture, one of the things that clients will often say is we should arrange this content by our audiences. So universities will often do staff, future students, current students, alumni.
Yeah.
I always have an example from Dell because they say for work, for home, which are just insane categories because the products that you buy, you could buy for either thing. So I talk about all those ways that you can organize. So audiences and tasks and subjects and geography, time-based schemes. So we talk a chunk about when those things work and when they don't. And I give them, because I've done this a lot, so I can give people lots of tips on things like audience-based schemes and say, this seems like it's going to work. People will say it's going to work. You'll be frustrated because it feels like it's not working, and that's because it's not going to work. Yeah, and then I usually run out of time. And then I teach a little bit just about, tips and tricks and, things that people ask me over the years about what their IA is. But the difficulty of all of this is that every single person in that room will have a different kind of information architecture project.
Yeah.
Some of them will be doing global navigation for some kind of information-heavy site, like an intranet or government content or something.
Yeah.
Some of them will be doing e-commerce where they've got like a bucket of products that they're trying to describe, tag, and surface. And those things are really different. So it's hard even in a day to cover off the different styles of project that people are doing and the bits of skills that they need and kind of make it coherent. But, I've been trying. I've been trying for 10 years. People walk out with good skills to take them through, but it certainly isn't everything. So I'm glad today that there's...
but it gets you thinking. I mean, you rarely stop to think and sit down for 4 hours and just think about information architecture.
Yeah.
My feeling is, and has been for a while actually, I mean, my Bible back in the day was information architecture for the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
That's how I got into the industry, basically. But it seems like people have forgotten this core knowledge. And when you try to learn UX today, it's all about experience and image, and it's like
and
the
and
Apple,
delight and
Apple, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or even worse, it's all about the tools.
So it's like, I'm sensing like it's forgotten. So in that sense, it's really relevant to have an introduction to information
absolutely
architecture.
is, yeah.
I think I need one.
And it's not a criticism to say that. I've been in this field for a long time, so I watched as, first we were all about information architecture, and that's what we were doing, and we were figuring out how to do structures and navigation and search and all kinds of things. And then the field did fall into user experience and really thinking about those experiences and starting to talk about how we make things delightful and sticky and engaging and that stuff's super cool. Like, it's really fun. It's more interesting for visual people who I'm not one. But I'm seeing an awful lot of people who have been in UX for a while but don't have the information architecture skills they need for a complex project. And so that is why it's good to have intro workshops, good books, because a lot of people are hitting this wall where they're like, oh, I've done some navigation design and now, and I think I kind of know, but they don't know. Oh God, this I sound so critical sometimes. A lot of times they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know about.
No, but exactly that.
Well,
because
the core and the structure and setting up things well
Yeah.
and not diving into interface design before you've thought about your content and how it all hangs together. I worked on a project once where the timing didn't work very well with my availability. So they started navigation design before I'd done the content model. Yeah. And I said it wasn't going to work. And I wouldn't tell what the project was, but I looked at the navigation design and I said, some of that's really good, but some of this cannot work. You can't put that content on the page with that sidebar because there is no relationship between those objects. You do need to wait for the model so that you can see this piece of content. I can then find this other stuff in the database and put it on the page. But if you haven't done your modeling or understood your structure, you certainly can't go putting things on a screen. But until you hit that wall and you go, oh, there's a gap and I didn't know how to do that and this thing didn't work, I think it's a big, you don't even know what you don't know.
No, exactly, and that is what I think one of the biggest challenges we have in the industry is you've got to feel where the boundaries are of what you know, and without coming into contact with multidisciplinarians or a multitude of aspects of the work, you're never going to know. Yeah. Oh yeah, of course, I do need to think or talk to someone about information architecture at this point.
And this is what conferences are great for, because you can turn up and sit in a room and have ideas fall in your head that you didn't know that you needed to know. Go, oh, look, there's all these other things happening out there. There's techniques that I'm not hearing about. One of the things that happens when the industry is busy is we're all so busy working hard, we don't write. Because we're like, we've got jobs and things.
So true.
So there's all this stuff happening where people are learning how to do things better and making new techniques, and we don't get to write it down and share it because we're busy with our jobs. The best books have come out of economic slumps.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It normally is the case. I mean, I haven't written anything now for a year because I've just been too busy.
I've got a list of projects that I'd like to write, but I've got a job and it's great, and I go to work. I'm not going home to write on the weekend.
Exactly.
But you're right. So sometimes it is just enough to have that taster, to be right. Sometimes like we do on the podcast as well. We introduce things to ourselves, new topics that we haven't really heard or thought about. But it's enough to actually just know they're existing. Yeah. To give you that insight into what you need to do. So what has changed? I mean, if from the viewpoint of information architecture and thinking about how you would introduce someone to it, how would you introduce someone now compared to maybe 10 years ago?
So I think two things have changed. One is that most of us are working on much more complex things than we used to. And both our industry and the client industry at large have also in that time had exposure to user experience. Our industry have had exposure to some information architecture concepts and things. So because clients, understand that usability matters and that experience matters, they will then pick up some work and just do it themselves. So we're not getting that level of simple work anymore. Like the consultants don't do easy things. So our industry as a whole doesn't necessarily have to work on easy projects. So we're getting the harder projects, of course. And we know more about what we're doing, so we're doing our complex projects better, I think, as well. Yeah. So, you think about something like, a big catalogue like Etsy or eBay or something, and the way we would have designed it 10 years ago, we're doing better at it now because we collectively just have more experience. Yeah. And like 10 years ago, we weren't dealing with as much, user-generated content and personalization, and so many people logged into things and trying to deliver experiences that fit those people. We weren't doing as much recommendations work. I can't think of really good recommendations sites 10 years ago, and so I'm working in TV at the moment, and just like super obsessed about understanding why people like shows. Like, what is it about that show and that show that seem really different, that means a person likes both of them? And 10 years ago we weren't diving into those kind of details and trying to deliver personalization and
we weren't collecting the data. We didn't have the services to collect data,
and we didn't have as much analytics and data.
It just struck me now that even longer than 10 years ago, we were doing services and websites where it was their first website. Yeah. So we the tools we had maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, you were getting gigs where you actually had to take a company from off the web to on the web. Yeah. So that just approaching those kind of projects from an information architecture point of view is utterly different to when you're getting called in by a client who has an e-commerce site or something where you've got to pull in what they've got and make adjustments. Yeah. So
with all of their back-end systems and I've done grocery websites, and it's actually fairly easy to come up with the IA. Like that's a job that's doable. I mean, there's some work when you've got 20,000 products in a store, but we know how to tackle that. The hard thing is bridging that and the back-end systems that have things classified in an entirely different way. The grocery store I work for, their back-end classifies soda bottles by size because that's what matters when you're putting things on shelves.
Oh, yeah.
Humans want, cola, lemon, lemonade, whatever. Humans think about the flavors they want or the brands that they want, not the size of bottle.
Yeah, and
so you have to bridge those crazy things.
Yeah, and how you categorise and group isn't. I mean, I don't think of all the kind of 1.5 litre bottles of
That's right.
of Coca-Cola products first. I'll think of Fanta Orange first, maybe, and then we'll decide. Okay, no, that's too much for the kids to drink. We'll get a smaller bottle.
Yeah. So the IA for that is easy, comparatively. Still, needs thinking, but the hard bit is the integration, working with the organisation, with their existing systems. They're really interesting problems, but they turn big really fast. It looks like you need to fix the IA. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, I can do that, but what about all of this?
I'm sort of wondering, so who's doing all this work? Because I'm thinking now, I'm looking at job listings, and I don't see anyone list that they want information architects. I look at the UX job postings. They don't list information architecture as a competence. So
Really?
what are the clients asking for? Do they know what to ask for?
Well, before you answer, Donna, I was gonna throw in and say another difference maybe with say 15 years ago, SEO branch.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's related.
Well, we did seem to go through an SEO period where everybody was really focused on getting their SEO right. And then I think, well, at least in my experience, the SEO and information architecture folks kind of realized that as long as you're not trying to do dark SEO, just doing really good content with, well grouped, well structured, well labeled, gets you a very long way. And then there are tweaks, which I don't know how 10 years ago when SEO was all the rage, it wasn't tweaks. It was like massive SEO efforts. And that's possibly why we're at a point where information architecture fell off a bit as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's my feeling a bit. Like that 10 years ago or so, then organisations became acutely aware of appearing in search results.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, it was an information architecture problem or a content strategy problem. Like, you can't appear top 3 on Google for something that you have no content about.
That's right.
It's kind of basic in some ways, but that was the kind of thing that happened. So you didn't, and
unless you do white text on a white background.
Well, you 10 years ago, people weren't kind of like picking up the phone and ringing up information architects to solve that problem.
No,
because there was SEO companies who were jumping on the problem.
We probably always had a marketing problem.
Yeah, well, definitely.
And so you were about to say about who's doing this work,
and
why is it not in job listings and things?
I don't know anyone who calls themselves an information architect
except me.
Yeah, exactly.
You've just met one. Actually,
Fantastic.
there are probably a few people
here.
Well, obviously, I know people on Twitter, and so I mean,
I think so. Sometimes, I mean, loads and loads of projects are easy enough for user experience folks with a bit of knowledge and maybe you've read a couple of books, maybe you've read the Polar Bear book or my book. There's lots of projects that are simple enough for that. I suspect that a lot of projects are being done by good user experience folks, but failing, and people don't quite know why they're failing. I do see sometimes projects like that people show me what they've worked on, and I look at the IA or the categories and I'm like, oh, I know that's going to fail, because they've done something that put an audience scheme in where it shouldn't or something. And there are some really complex problems that information architects are being asked to do. So I've worked on federal government, whole of government information architecture.
Yeah.
Because Lisa Reichelt knew that she needed information architecture and knew me and knew to ask for it. The job I'm doing with the ABC, they know they need information architecture because they've got a lot of content that they're trying to structure. So they know enough to know to ask. Yeah. One of our big retailers in Australia, Mags Hanley's working for, who's at like Mags as a ex-BBC, ex-UK, really well-known information architect, they knew that they had a problem with their catalogue and to ask for it. So, like, it does get asked a bit. You probably don't see it in, it's probably much more, I know we need this because it's super complex. I'm going to handpick people.
Exactly.
That's possibly why it's not turning up in
job listings,
job listings so much. But there definitely are people around still with that kind of detail focus and skills.
And again, back to the fact that there's so many existing things like websites. I mean, it's maybe not seen as necessary to bring in the information architect specialist as a job. When you already have the grocery categories on your e-commerce site and so on.
Yeah, you've already got a taxonomy for your catalogue.
But you need to
And
revise.
sometimes people aren't trying to fix the fundamental problems as well. They're trying to. We see all those kind of flashier, more fun, more innovative projects, and probably fewer. Oh my god, we've got to fix the fundamentals here, and that might be part of it as well. Okay, well, just let go. I mean, I've certainly heard of projects who they're like, "Oh, that's way too hard to rebuild that. We'll just make a new one and start from scratch."
To get people interested in information architecture, I know that you like to play games as well. You have some exercises. Could you recommend some exercises that you could do with your team to get them thinking more about information architecture?
Yes. And the yes but is...
It'll cost you.
I'm not going to say it depends. No, I think that you need to... So I've always been of the mind that I invent techniques quite a lot, and I always have, because I always go, okay, I've got this problem. What might I do with this problem to solve it, rather than say, what game might I play or what technique might I use? So often I'll invent stuff. I didn't invent card sorting. It was already around. But stuff like card sorting or techniques or games that help people see that other people think differently are really good. So you can do something where you... get ideas of your content, or get I don't know, if you grab a grocery store list or grab any kind of domain and say, okay, we'll organize these, and you just show people that they think differently. So that's often really good to do with stakeholders, to show that this stakeholders or people who have expertise in a field think very differently to people who don't have expertise in it. So you can play games like that in workshops that help just go, we're different to each other.
I really like that, because I mean, that's something that a lot of UXers presume that what they've thought up is the solution. And then just doing an exercise like that, it's so fast. You realize everybody thinks differently.
Yeah, and we think differently because we've got different upbringings, different specializations, different ways we use words. In Europe, there's a lot of people who are working in more than one language, and that affects thought and how you think about how things might be grouped, but so does your culture and your way of approaching the world. So being able to show people that is often a really good start, just to go, look, this is what we're dealing with people thinking in different ways. We just did this super fun thing at the ABC the other day where I'm working in TV, and we're looking at kind of personalization for our TV homepage. And we got our usability testers to do this thing where they designed their perfect homepage. So we basically got, you imagine Netflix, and there's I don't know, gritty horror films, sci-fi thrillers, blah, blah, blah. So we got all of our rows of different kind of content, and we said, here you go. Make your perfect homepage. And they would go through, and you could do this internally as well. They went through and went, no, wouldn't like that. That's stupid. I feel like I should like this one, so I'm going to put it on. I feel like I should watch more of that. I love those. They're great. And boy, we learned a lot of stuff. And then, being able to even if you don't get internal people to do the activity, showing them what we learned from it and showing them the things that people did and why they did it. So it might not be a game inside your team, but showing why people think like they do. And the stuff like, I really feel like I should be better at that, so I'm going to put this on my list.
That's a wonderful
even though I know I'm never going to watch it.
Yeah, but exactly. It's a fantastic amount of meta information that you gather from that process. Now we've got characteristics for these objects that are buried amongst these objects.
So we can make a category of documentaries you think you should watch. And it would probably work.
Or extrapolate other documentaries from those.
Yep, or something.
Yeah.
But it was a fun game to play in the usability test. And it's not necessarily an existing technique that's out there. I'm like, what are we trying to learn? I reckon we could do this thing and it'd be really fun. It's super fun just sitting and talking to people and say, so what do you watch on TV? Why do you like that? It's really, really interesting diving into the details of people's brains.
It is.
And making them think about why they do things.
I'm now really excited. I'm actually going to schedule in a reading of your book now.
Excellent.
I'm realizing I need this.
So, yeah, I'm feeling much more excited
Yeah,
about information architecture
exactly,
now at the
yes.
end of this.
Thank you so much for thank you for sitting down with us, Donna.
Thanks, Donna.
You're very welcome.
I really like what Donna said about the best books have come out of economic slumps, because that really made me think of how much our world changes. As we also talked about, how much has changed since I read about information architecture for the first time. And you read a title like the title of a workshop, which is Introduction to Information Architecture, and you think, yeah, well, I know that sort of. And then you don't think about how much has changed in the 15 to 20 years since I first read that Polar Bear book. And I realized there's so much to learn here that we should be focusing on, that, as we said, are core competencies that we should be thinking about before we even put pen to paper, before we even do a sketch. We need to think about the structure. We need to know what we're doing.
I saw, of course, Donna's workshop title and thought, Introduction to Information Architecture. But if she'd put it actually as Reintroduction to Information Architecture,
yes, exactly,
then I think I'd have raised my eyebrows a little bit and thought about how much things have changed and how it isn't the same as what it was, and how maybe you do need to rethink some of the core skills you've got, or awareness, like we talked about. I mean, a lot of the time it's enough to just know something exists, and how to kind of how to pick up on it, rather than learn it thoroughly yourself.
And also, like we said, a lot of the things that have changed is that things are much more complex today than they were before, which means I think that information architecture really is even more relevant today than it was before. There are so many more things to consider when you're building a website and trying to help people, to empower people by making it easier to navigate.
Yeah. Do you remember? Like, it made me think of this kind of thing is the complexity. It's the integration between different interfaces or systems or databases or information models, and it reminded me of our chat a year ago nearly with Jonas Söderström.
Oh yeah,
when we talked about complexity.
Yes.
And how things are just so complicated now.
Yeah, and which is a really huge problem in itself. Something we should be addressing more, and because a lot of the times we think that yes, what we do is about making it simple for people, making it easy for them to find and understand information, but it should be more about helping them learn, helping them make better decisions. So the complexity, I think, should be something that we should be more aware of, because it's there, and it's something that we can't always help everyone with, unless we actually, now I'm thinking about information architecture again, unless we actually do the legwork and understand how the different bits and pieces of the World Wide Web fit together for each individual, so that they can navigate it.
I think Donna mentioned discovery and the work you do during the discovery phase. And coming up later this autumn, we have an interview with Dan Brown about discovery. But I feel there's a lot of focus around discovery being to do with the interface.
Yeah.
Discovering what people want to do with interfaces and how they're going to work with interfaces, or how they currently use interfaces. Even though there's a lot of ethnographic aspects too, some of the things to do with information structures perhaps is underlooked in discovery phases.
I definitely believe so. Yes.
And even looking at existing data, but so that'd be interesting to think more about how you can be multidimensional in your discovery phases.
Yeah,
And I really like that she also brought up the importance of, well, really diversity in the way that we discussed, that you have to notice how different people interpret information in different ways, and people want to have interfaces in different ways because we are different people. It's hard to find one solution, and that's where information architecture can help. It can help you create solutions where you can see information from different viewpoints by sorting it and navigating through it in different ways.
If you enjoy the show, then please rate us, star us, heart us, or whatever interaction pattern that the particular platform you're listening to us on has decided to employ. And there's bound to be a whole team of wonderful UXers and designers that have decided what is best for you in that platform. We're a UX podcast, one word, if you want to @mention us. Show notes are available on uxpodcast.com. We are your hosts, James Royal Lawson and Per Axboom.
Remember to keep moving.
See you on the other side. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
My key.
My key who?
My key doesn't fit in the keyhole.